Good day, ma'am, and I am Ramel Canete, and for today I'm going to discuss the Chapter 2 in Business Organization and Management, which entitled Theory of Organization in Business and Industry. So without further ado, sound practice and fundamental principles. Terminology in business. Terminology in business is a principle can be defined as a fundamental statement or truth providing a guide to thought or action. So, the fundamental statement applies to a series of phenomena under consideration and signifies what results to expect when the principle is applied. Hence, by means of principles of management, a manager can avoid fundamental mistakes in his work and with justified confidence can reasonably foretell the results of many of his efforts. There are certain principles of management that are reasonably well established, accepted, and used. They cover many facts of management. So, principles are basic, yet they are not absolute. They are not laws and they do not imply that the same identical results will occur in each set of circumstances. In application of management, principles are flexible in that they should take into account particular, special, and changing conditions. Knowledge of principle is helpful, but skill in its application is equally important. Management, because of management, its dynamic nature and especially its creative aspect will probably perpetuate in imponderables in managerial knowledge and skill, but it should be emphasized that principles of management contribute tremendously toward the development of nucleus and with greater understanding, successful application, and the future progress of management can be built. Principles are guide. They assist in the comprehension and application of management, but they are to be used carefully and discreetly. So, first, attributes for the term organization. The word organization has been used to transmit a variety of meanings by various authors. A certain author, for instance, defines organization in the broad sense of collection of persons working together for a common purpose. Another equally known author employs the word organization to indicate a group of individuals who are cooperating willingly and effectively for a common end. Another author defines organization as the process of continuing the work which individuals or groups have to perform with the faculties necessary for its execution, that the duties so performed provide the best channels for the efficient, systematic, positive, and coordinated application of the available efforts. Another author defines organization as the structural relationship between various factors in the enterprise. The structural factors are what are called the 5 M's. The 5 M's are the men, materials, machines, methods, and money. The other school thought emphasizes the conception of an organization as relationship between various functions and factors, and within that relationship, the process takes place as desired. When we think of organization, we should have a clear mental picture of whether we are referring to the process of relationship. Basic consideration organization. So no single plan could be applied discriminately in every situation. Thus, in developing any organization, the following considerations should be taken into account. First, there should be a clear and complete statement of the objectives. The objective permeates all activities within an enterprise. It influences the number of activities and the extent to which these activities are carried out. It is extremely difficult to judge the effectiveness of an organization without an adequate knowledge of the objective of the enterprise. To attain objectives, this must be clearly defined. then they must be balanced. The attainment of objective requires the performance of many activities. It may necessitate the expansion of personnel, the further division of work, the delegating of authority, and the creation of subordinate level of responsibility. Second, there should be a thorough analysis of the entire proposition surrounding the business. Objective has been clarified. All pertinent information on the business must be assembled. All possible courses of action should be analyzed. The result of such analysis will give a fair approximation of the ultimate chances of success and the magnitude of the problems involved. Third, the necessary functions should be determined. Organization building requires the organizers to ascertain those functions which are considered most important and which will not require the most attention. The organizers determines which groups perform the major operations of the enterprise such as manufacturing or marketing. The scope of the work and the duties pertaining to each department should be clearly defined. The proper setup of divisions and subdivisions within each department is ascertained. Fourth, the men best fitted for the work and to head each depart or division should be selected. Picking the people to man the managerial positions in the organization is a major job. The success of any enterprise will depend largely on the ability and skill of the executives who will run it. The men selected should be given sufficient authority to operate their own department or division without interference. They should be held strictly accountable for the results. Each man must know exactly what is expected of him, and all of them must be imbued with a willingness to work together efficiently and cooperatively to a common end. Underlying principles of organization. The foregoing considerations are considered on the basis of underlying principles. However, certain underlying principles can be given. Among them are number one, principle of objective. In starting any business enterprise or in the carrying on any activity by the concern as a whole or by any of its units, a clear and complete definition of the objective is a prerequisite. Any business concern or any individual must adhere to a definite purpose or aim. The objective serves as the guide to future planning and action. It integrates policies, projects, and programs. It enables everybody in the organization to act consistently in accomplishing a common end. Number two, analysis. The principle of analysis. Analysis is the act of breaking up a whole into parts so as to find out their nature, qualities, importance, and many more. A sound business judgment attempts to build organization through the full knowledge of the requirements of the business. It is therefore essential that before starting any business, there should be a study as to whether the articles to be produced will meet the public demands, whether they could be produced at the right time and the right price at the public will be able to pay. Number three, the principle of simplicity. All activities which are not absolutely necessary should be eliminated and those retained should be handled in the simplest way. The creation of positions should be based on paramount necessity. The simplest organization that will serve to attain the desired objective is considered the best to use. Those that are retained should be treated in the simplest practical manner. 4. The principle of functionalization. The organization should be built around the main functions of the business and not around the individuals. A function is a normal or characteristic way of doing a task. The nature of the business determines the main function of that business. The nature is the proper basis for the organization to be established. Functions can grow indefinitely, but persons are restricted. On the other hand, if the organization of any concern is built and around the function, proper distribution of work could easily be done, thus eliminating any one man to become so powerful and so dependable upon as to be indispensable. Applying the principle of functionalization. Step 1. To be done is to show each function or activity required to carry on the business and to segregate the same function or activity from the rest. Step 2. Grouping together of like and complementary functions so as to form several major groups. All necessary activities relating to manufacturing should be included in another major group and so on. Organization built and around function is strong. It has logical channels for growth and development along each other of the major fields of activity. In any fields of business activity, adjustments can be made within the respective department without disturbing the organization or work of other departments or the general plan of the organization as a whole. The application of the principle of functionalization, however, varies according to the size of the business. In small concern, the major functions of the business would probably be sales, manufacturing, and finance. In larger concern, the major function might be sales, manufacturing, finance, engineering, and personnel. In large of a very large concern with numerous products or number of plants and nationwide or perhaps worldwide distribution, organization is not simple. Number 5. The principle of departmentalization or departmentalization. In a big organization, the scope of operation can be very broad, thus necessitating departmentation to achieve a smoother flow of operations. Departmentation by territory or location is followed where names to local conditions offered advantages such as cutting in the cost of operations. Territorial departmentation can be illustrated by the establishment of branches of the practice of banks, also regional centers for sales companies where some geographical market segregation is feasible. This means of departmentalization offers a good opportunity for training. An executive demonstrates his ability to a certain location to a higher position. Another means of departmentalization is through the grouping of similar and interrelated functions or the grouping of common or homogeneous activities to form an organization unit. To illustrate, an organization can group its fundamental activities to providing selling and financing. All members engage in direct production activities grouped under one department. So functional department makes very good use of the advantage which arises the specialization like job mastery and increase in the work efficiency and proficiency. Number 6, the principle of centralization of authority and responsibility. There should be a centralized executive control in the army and sometimes in the government. This is known as command authority. Centralized executive control is absolutely necessary in order to have authority and responsibility definitely fixed. This does not mean that the executive should attempt to do everything himself. He should delegate certain authority and responsibility to his subordinates. This principle is related to the principle of unity of command. In any organization, the delegation of authority is essential to the existence of the said organization. Delegation of authority means the granting of authority from one executive to another means the granting of authority from one executive to another for the purpose of accomplishing the given task or goal in the shortest period of time. Customarily, delegation is considered as being from a higher level to a lower level, but delegation can be from a lower level to higher level or between levels on the same plane. The delegation of authority does not mean the giving away of authority, but rather the same authority is retained by the person foresee that the actions of those under him leads the attainment of the company's objectives. The superior, on the other hand, has all responsibility of the task at hand, so he must also see to it that Those to whom he has delegated authority performs towards the realization of the goal. Number 7, the principle of limited span of executive control. So, it's a limiting factor on the number of organizational units and their arrangement in an organization structure. Span of control means the number of subordinates an executive can manage effectively. Organizational units are used because of the limitations of the proper number of persons to be subordinated to an executive is different situations and circumstances in business organization, like the type of work, whether routine, repetitive, or homogeneous in nature, the ability of the executive, his relative location in the structure, fear possible rivals, faith in subordinates or perform satisfactory, and the degree of teamwork that is present. More specifically, it can be stated that when subordinates are well trained, the span of control can be relatively large, presumably since the subordinates needs a little controlling and can initiate proper action quickly. Relatively short span of control are common at executive organization level. On the other hand, operative supervisions tend to require more manual effort. The decisions required are not at high pioneering type. Contacts are direct with the subordinate and the areas of operations are fairly well defined and limited. Under such conditions, spans of control may be relatively greater than that in the case of the management members at high organization levels. Application of principles. The use of principles by any particular establishment is a matter of adoption. This is, after all, the use of good sense in applying knowledge. Any business to the successful must be built according to the certain basic principle. It must it must be built along definite, carefully planned lines so that the structure will be strong and will not collapse under its own weight. In other words, for any business to prosper, it must, it must be well organized and effectively managed. It must be conducted efficiently in humanized way, economically, and for the good of the public. Limiting factors in applying principles. So there are limiting factors present in the business. The successful businessman applies the basic underlying principles in accordance with with the conditions in the particular concern. In a certain business, basic principles may be applied fully to advantage while others not, because there are present limiting factors which stand in the way of the full application of the principles in question. For example, let us take an ideal organization for a certain new enterprise which necessitates four major divisions of activity. These divisions, finance, sales, productions, and engineering, need a competent executive in charge of each. The company, however, on how of limited finance resources, choose one man of broad training to be in charge of two major fields or departments rather than to head only one. The ideal plan, therefore, of placing one man for each department was deviated from due to the limiting factor, the scarcity of money. Thus, in applying principles in a growing concern, one must keep constantly in mind that the fact that every concern there exists conditions which stand in the way of achieving an ideal organization. Company policies, available personnel, weight of opinion of influential executives are other common factors affecting the application of principles. Need for sound organization method. In the historical development of business, there was at first no real plan for organization in the business concern. Many business simply grow with the times, the organization being built among the available personnel without any reference to any definite plan. Such business concerns are above described may dividends as prosperous times in business prevail, but upon the advent of declined activities or depression or change in consumer demands, they readily begin to feel the change. Usually, those in charge cannot see the existing condition in their proper light and hence cannot realize that the underlying cause is the black sound of organization methods. Such kind of business is marked by the absence of coordination of activities. Thus, the following situations may come about: the sales department almost invariably considering its function to consist solely of selling with no responsibility for cooperation with the manufacturing department. The manufacturing department therefore cannot plan its work according to any schedule of sales expectations and is forced to operate unevenly and inefficiently. Likewise, the finance department is concerned solely with its own interests, and this absence of coordination may be carried on throughout the entire organization. Need for an organizational chart. Organizational charts are diagram form representing the important aspects of organization. Organizational charts serve as useful tools in helping visualize an organization in its entirety when it can provide quite burdensome when expressed in their spoken or written description. Charts usually reflect on the divisions and formal lines of authority to avoid clutter which can greatly reduce the chart's usefulness. So charts indicate the different functions performed, their groupings and relationship with one another. Organizational manual. Organizational manual. An organizational manual is a supplement to the organizational chart by providing additional information on the details presented in the organizational chart. Materials clearly express the functions, duties, relationships of organizations and unit and makes available information of pertinent mar- matters concerning its position. In this manner, understanding and knowledge of functions, limitations, and requirements of each position can be enhanced. How to diagnose organization. The big rage in organization development in recent years has been to wrap everybody up in some pre-packaged solution. But managers are not the same wherever they work. The organization itself makes a profound difference to the nature and problems of the men who are attempting to manage it. There are at least four linking strands which the diagnostician needs to isolate before they can recommend any sensible scheme for improving any company's performance in human or material terms. There must be at least four strands. They are: number one, history. How and why did the organization its present form? Number two, resources. What resources are used, whether as capital or materials? Number three, knowledge. What special knowledge does the organization possess or make use of? Number four, relationships. Relationships. How is power, not merely authority, exercised and by whom? What special interests do individuals or groups within the organization pursue? How relationships of authority or cooperation of negotiation, etc. handled both inside the organization and with the outside world. So that's all, and thank you, ma'am.